When I was 15, me and a friend were at a soccer tournament and we were just chilling, kicking the ball around before our match. When out of nowhere, the world just turned pitch black for like half a second. Me and my friend looked at each other and he said to me, "What the f*** just happened? You saw that too?" I looked around and no one else reacted or seemed to even notice what occurred. For sure, the strangest thing to ever happen to me. I have quite a few experiences I can't explain, but this one just happened yesterday. I was looking out at the mountains. I live in another mountain, so it's a great view from my window when I saw some people walking down the side of one. Very clearly humanoid figures. I watched them for a while before going to paint, when I suddenly realized that for me to have seen them that clearly from so far away, they would have needed to be huge. I rushed back over but didn't see them again. That's not the first time something similar has happened since I moved here either. As crazy as it sounds, I'm starting to think there's giants in these mountains. I was in 5th grade and thinking about some of the kids in my class. In my head, I thought, I don't like John, he's weird. I swear, I didn't say it aloud. About a minute or two later, John comes up to me and says, "Why do you think I'm weird?" I had no idea what to say. Later in class, he dropped a note on my desk, but to this day, I can't decipher his handwriting. Overall, just a weird experience. I was working at a hospital as a waiter. One room was off limits. A nurse said a guy was dead in there. Some rooms were single and others were double, so I thought, well, the other guy might need food, so I went in. It was a single. There was a guy, and I'd never really seen a dead person. I didn't know what to do, so I sat the tray down anyway. This guy rises up in bed and looks at me. I'd almost shit myself. Was I dead? I don't know, I'll get a nurse. I walked the hell out of the room, found a nurse who yelled at me for going in there. I interrupted her with, "That guy is alive and talking to me." She didn't believe me, and then a bunch of alarms started going off in his room. I saw like 5 nurses rush in his fucking room. I had a job to do, so I planned on following up with what happened. He died again. Probably one of the more up things to happen in my lifetime that I can't explain. My best friend and I are 19, living together in one of our first apartments. Someone keeps turning the hall thermostat to exactly 70 degrees on the old spin dial. It's winter, we're Wisconsinites, and broke cheap skates, so keep it at 65 and just layer up and deal with it. We each think the other is doing it. After a few mini arguments, we decide we're bumping into the narrow hallway and need to be more mindful of it. 70 degrees exactly keeps what happening anyway. Mild tension ensues. We're going away together to visit friends out of town and will be gone for several days. We deliberately turn the heat way down to 60 or less. Can't remember exactly, but down. I watch her do it. I'm taking my last bags out of the car, then look at it one last time to confirm. We come back over a weekend later to see it at 70 on the dot. Ghosts like to be cozy, I guess. One time at about 6 p.m. in Wilmington, Massachusetts, I was driving my FedEx truck back to the warehouse at the end of a long day. It was December, so it was quite dark out. Turned a corner and there in the middle of the street is an old-fashioned stagecoach being pulled by 2 enormous horses, and it stopped dead in the middle of the road. There was absolutely no way I could stop in time, so I slammed on the brakes and braced for impact, which unfortunately included closing my eyes. Truck slams to a halt. Packages fly everywhere in the back. I open my eyes expecting to see wood and horse meat everywhere, and nothing. There's nothing there. Only possible explanation is that it was Christmas time, and every FedEx UPS employee can tell you're overworked and exhausted, but it was so real. I could see the veins on the muscular horse's face. Freaked me right the fuck out. When I was like 14, I was sitting in a chair across from a screen door. We had our regular door open with the screen door closed, which is common in the South. In a weird, hyper-excited voice, my mom points outside and says, "What's that?" And it was this big glowing white light. I was like, "That's the moon, Mom, haha." And she takes me out the front door onto the front porch, and we turn slightly to the right, and she says, "No, that's the moon." I looked at it, and it was even smaller than this huge circle of light I was seeing before. And now the more I looked at it, the more that big light didn't look like it was in the sky. It looked like it was right behind the pine trees. It was terrifying. Sometimes when I'm lying in bed trying to sleep, but still quite awake, everything suddenly gets way darker. But it's not because of a cloud passing over the moon or something. The light through the curtains doesn't change, if that makes sense. It's like my vision is fading away, even though my eyes are open and I'm not half asleep or dreaming yet. I was 9 years old and living in Kansas. One rainy afternoon, I was lying on a top bunk of a bunk bed when I drifted off to sleep. I dreamed of watching a butterfly. I was much older in the dream, but being a child, I couldn't quite place my age or the setting. Many years later, at the age 17, I was living in North Carolina. I was sitting in the backyard of a lawn chair while reading a paperback. I looked up and saw this beautiful butterfly sitting on a bush. I had this weird sense it was looking at me. I stared for a long time and it flew away. That night I had a dream about me watching the same butterfly as an 8-year-old in Kansas, lying on a bunk bed. I woke abruptly. My hair was standing on end, my heart was pounding. I've never been able to figure out what all that means, if it means anything. 2 years ago, I was living homeless. I still worked, but I'd left a long-term partner and was kind of reeling away like a damaged ship. I was going to the gym, keeping clean. I just wanted some space, so I was living in a tent inside the Iron Age fort here in the south of England. At some point, it was occupied by the 2nd Augusta Legion after their landing near Southampton. I was pitched near where the entrance to the fort was, and one night, stone cold sober, I felt the earth thrumming and heard hooves. Now, I can't remember the first time I was on a horse. I've ridden since I was small, owned horses, worked with horses professionally, and I heard clear as day about 30 horses go past where I was at a fast walk, then breaking into canter as they cleared where the fort entrance was. I could hear equipment jingling, but no voices, which I wish I'd heard to know who they were. I was, to be fair, pretty scared. Where the entrance curves out to the fort, it's all trees. You couldn't take a string of horses through there, sounding like that. They went off down the hill and faded away. In the morning, there was no trace of anyone having ridden through. It was beyond strange. I worked in a very old pub my aunt and uncle were restoring as chef. My aunt, uncle, and their 3 sons lived upstairs in the creepy-as-hell hotel section of the pub. Anyway, they experienced a lot of crazy things up there, but I'll share the 2 I experienced. First one. My 3 cousins were in the kitchen with me at the start of the day. The pub was still closed. We were the only ones inside. I was prepping for the day's service and chatting to my little cousins when I turn and look to the past, the window in the kitchen wall the food is served to the waiters from. And I saw the top of my cousin's head go by it on the dining room side. He's only 6, so he's short, and that's all I could see of his head. Then I looked back to my work and noticed that my cousin is actually standing right next to me and has been the whole time with his brothers. Who the hell was that walking by the pass? I swear it was a little boy running by. Second one was at the end of the night. Closed up the pub and I'm having a knockoff beer with my uncle. He's standing at the bar pouring me a drink and I'm sitting on the bar stool. There's a second bar opposite in the next room. I can see through the hall to the darkened bar and I see a man walk up to the bar waiting to be served. I nod to him and weakly point at him, signaling to my uncle that a customer is waiting to be served and look back down at my beer. My uncle is smiling at me and says, "What do you see?" I look up and there's no man at the bar. I forgot we had been closed and locked up for half an hour. I'm wide-eyed and say, "I swear to God, someone was at the front bar." He says, "Yeah, but we have never orders." I'm freaked out and decide I should head home for FSS. That was so fucking scary. I get scared thinking about it. That was 5 years ago. They left that pub. It's probably empty for the 4th time by now. Every business fails. That place is cursed. I was going for a trail run in the mountains and stopped on a bridge that takes you over some rapids running down from the glacier. There was a lady there meditating, and after a few minutes she stopped and we struck up a friendly conversation about how much we enjoyed the nature around us. We say our goodbyes and I turn back to the view for a second, look back and she's vanished. No way she could have gotten out of sight in less than at least 20 seconds either side, and that's at full sprint. I hastily look in the rapids, nothing, no splashes either. I run one way, then back the other way. She's gone. Pretty sure I met Mother Nature. She was a wonderful lady. Great vibes. So this isn't anything crazy, but it is something I haven't been able to explain. Ever since middle school, my body has developed some sort of internal alarm clock to where if I know what time I need to wake up, I'll automatically wake up at said time. Nowadays, I have to wake up at 5:30 a.m. to get to work, and I've never had to use the alarm on my phone because without failure, I've always woken up at 5:30. Never been late to school, work, a day in my life because of it. So I've had quite a few incredibly creepy experiences that I couldn't initially explain, but I like to think I'm an incredibly skeptical person when it comes to the supernatural, and for the most part, I've been able to find satisfactory explanations. That being said, there was this one time that will stick with me always. When I was a junior in college, my best friend and I lived in an apartment building that could best be described as a crack house. It was cheap and pretty much falling apart, with exclusively studio apartments, but it was also kind of cozy with little kitchenettes and nooks in each apartment. I kept some Poland Spring bottled water on the counter in my kitchenette because the tap water was gross, which will come into play soon. One day I was sitting on the edge of my bed and my friend was sat facing me in a swivel chair, and we were just hanging out smoking weed next to the window and gossiping about our classes and lives. We were just calmly talking when all of a sudden one of the bottles of water on the counter flew across the room and slammed into the wall, landing on the floor a good distance from where it hit, from hitting the wall as hard as it did. There was no one else in the room, no wind coming in, at least not with enough force to yeet a water bottle across the room, and we both jumped at the same time in shock, so it wasn't some sort of hallucination that the other clung onto. It was just this weird instance where a bottle violently threw itself against a wall without any cause or reason. To this day, I cannot figure out what happened with the bottle. My granny had just passed away from cancer, and my brother and I had spent the night with my papa, her husband. He always preferred the couch and had us kids sleep in the bed. My brother and I woke up early that next morning and went to make our papa some coffee and realized the coffee was already brewed as well as a mug with coffee in it sitting at the end of the dining table. We didn't think too much of it until it clicked that papa was passed out on the couch. We brushed it off and assumed he had somehow woken up before us and made it hot, then changes his mind because he was sleepy and laid back down and passed out. Well, when he woke up, we asked and he denied doing it and then started to tear up. The coffee mug was specifically Granny's that she used every morning and sitting where she sat always. It was comforting and scary at the same time. My great-grandma was, to be honest, an evil bitch. Totally screwed over my grandpa, so we didn't have any communication with her for 2 years or my great-uncle because of what they did. But one day I was standing at the end of my driveway when a golden van drove by really slow. Not like the van itself was going slow, but everything went in slow motion for a short moment. And it was right on the right side of the road. I couldn't see anyone in the driver's seat, but I saw an older woman in the passenger seat leaning forward and smiling really big at me, waving. She had golden blonde hair, teased really big, and red lipstick on with a huge golden rimmed glasses. I swear on everything that was my great-grandmother, which was weird because we lived a good hour away and where she was, and she never came our way as we disconnected. I didn't say anything to anyone because I thought it would upset my grandpa. Fast forward a few hours later, Grandpa is calling all of his grandkids in his room one by one, and no one said anything when they came out. Just sent the next kid in. When it was my turn, I sat next to my grandpa, and he was choked up and had tears in his eyes. He explained to me that his mother, my great-grandmother, had passed away in early April, and it was now mid-May, and his brother's girlfriend called us because my great-uncle had forgotten to call Grandpa. Missed the funeral and everything. I didn't tell my grandpa until a few months ago that I had seen her hours before he told me she died a month earlier. This was about 9 years ago. I've also been able to describe relatives in my grandpa's house that had died in the house before I was born. I've never even seen pictures of them. I don't like to claim that I have some connection with the dead, but sometimes I just be seeing shit, and it happens to be dead relatives, lol. My little sister's very young at the time dad had just passed away. Me and my siblings slept in the same bed at this time, and my brother and I woke up multiple times to her talking to the wall while sitting on the bed. Finally, I ended up asking her what she was doing. She told me she was talking to Daddy. I was so freaked that I went to my mom about it. She came in there the next time my little sister was caught doing it. My mom came out crying, and I had no clue for years why. I was still very young too. The subject had come up somehow, and my mom, later in my life, told me that my sister had told her that her daddy wanted to remind her of something. It was something my little sister would have never known. Strictly between my mom and her dad. Can't explain it. Alright, so there I was. 8 years old, me cooking a cup of ramen noodles. I poured the water into the cup, and I put the cup of noodles into the microwave and punched in 3-minute required cooking time. Right when the microwave started running, I shit you not, the trash bin started rotating on its own. I wasn't hallucinating or anything since it was broad daylight. It sounds like I'm bullshitting, but you have to have been there to really see for yourself. I don't know how it happened, but the trash bin just started spinning by itself as if someone or something was turning it. Needless to say, I noped out of that kitchen and ran to my older stepsister. I probably wasn't that freaked out, though, since after a couple of minutes, I went back to the kitchen as if nothing happened. In my sophomore year of high school, some friends and I visited an abandoned insane asylum that we heard lots of ghost stories about from upperclassmen. Super creepy, but nothing crazy happened. We went home and told my friend's mom about it, and she demanded we take her there. We all jump in the car, and when we arrive, there's a group of about 5 other people. They tell us about these underground tunnels that were once used by the workers and ask if we want to see them. We obviously say yes, and they bring us to the back of one of the buildings where we have to crawl one by one through a hole that leads into a room of the building. When I crawl through and stand up, there's nobody there. My friends and friend's mom crawl through after me, and we're all there alone. We called out to the people and spent about 10 minutes looking around for them. Figured it was a prank, and they were going to jump out and scare us, but nope, nothing. We were so creeped out, we left after that. Sometimes when I'm lying in bed and just about to drift off to sleep, I'll wake up suddenly feeling very wrong. Everything just feels wrong. Then the walls will start to shift and objects will look like they're getting bigger and smaller. Then I'll hear a weird rhythm that overtakes everything until even my thoughts follow the same rhythm. I'll always have the same nightmare full of abstract shapes and things like that, but won't be able to remember the main part of the dream clearly at all when I wake up. I hate it. This has been happening ever since I can remember. I've recently discovered I can make it stop through humming. For some reason, the humming kind of restarts my brain and makes that stupid rhythm go away. I sometimes wonder if it has something to do with my synesthesia. When my ex-best friend and I were like 8 to 9 years old, we were walking through this ground which was in front of my house, just randomly talking here and there. Suddenly I heard mine and my friend's name being called out, but it sounded like it came from a distance, but from above, like around the environment of the world. I can't explain it. It was the voice of our other guy friend, which was weird because he had gone out of town that time, since it sounded way too soft and something like someone speaking through a speaker microphone. I thought it was just me hearing stuff. But my friend looked at me and she was like, "Did you hear that? It sounds like a guy friend's name's voice." And it said our names. That creeped both of us out. So we went to the barber shop where his father worked and we were asked him if the guy was back or something. But he was like, "Not yet, he'll be back in a few days." And indeed, the guy came days later. Until this day, this incident creeps me out a lot, and we still don't know where or how we heard them.